And in 2008, he became the Guatemalan ambassador to the United States under the Colón administration, and he reappointed as ambassador to the United States, position to date as a board member or partner for surgery. But really appreciate you agreeing.
Thank you, Todd. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to thank you for your interest in Guatemala, and thank you for your interest in the wonderful work that Partner for Surgery is doing in Guatemala. I know that many of you, if not most of you, have been to Guatemala. But for those of you who have not, I should tell you that Guatemala is a country with impressive natural beauty and a diverse and strong culture that stems from the great Maya civilization and from 300 years of Spanish colonial rule. So for good or bad, we are a result of that combination, that most interesting mix. Guatemala is also a country with great geographic diversity. It has 33 volcanoes in a country the size of Tennessee. It has coasts on both oceans. It has lakes. It has the stunningly beautiful Lake Atitlan, a lake surrounded by 3 volcanoes located in the highlands, in the western highlands of Guatemala. It has many Mayan archaeological sites, including Tikal, one of the most important Mayan sites, the site of Maya civilization. It has the city of Antigua, the Spanish colonial city that today is a World Heritage Site declared by UNESCO. So it is a country with a lot to offer to visitors, but it is also a country with a rather complicated history. I'm going to speak just a little bit about the changes that Guatemala has gone through, at least in my lifespan, because they are pretty significant. Guatemala has gone through very important political, economic, and social changes in the past 50 years, at least, not to speak of course, what has been going on in the past. I was born and raised in Guatemala City. So were my parents. But both of my parents came from Quetzaltenango, the city in western Guatemala, the second largest. My paternal grandfather immigrated to the city where he was able to go to university. He became a lawyer. And my maternal grandfather became a medical doctor. He specialized in tropical medicine at Tulane, and he dedicated his life to public health. He worked all his life in academia and public health, fighting tropical disease. So I mention this because I'm very proud of their accomplishments and to give you a sense of where I come from. I was telling you that we've gone through important changes in the past 50 years. And we have come a long way to establish a democratic form of government. We had a transition to democracy that began almost 25 years ago. And it's been slow and difficult, but we've been able to sustain democracy as a form of government for longer than what we had in the past. Guatemala had brief periods of democratic rule in the middle of last century. It had elected governments throughout its history, but not such a sustained form of government such as the one we have now. We're confident that this time it is going to last. We're confident that we will be able to consolidate democratic rule. And a lot has to do with the fact that our democratic transition has taken place at the same time that it is going on elsewhere in Latin America and in the world. We're going through what has been called the third democratic wave of democratization around the world. So we benefit a lot from the support of other democracies in our part of the world and elsewhere. We also have undergone important economic changes. We have opened our economies and we have expanded trade with the United States and with other parts of the world. So our economy has grown, has expanded, has diversified, and that has had important implications in our society. So this gives you a sense of a country that is moving forward, that is dynamic, but that still has to overcome a number of problems. And the challenge now is not only to consolidate democratic rule, it is also to protect civil liberties, and it is also to ensure stable governance. But at the same time, we have the challenge to deliver economic growth, jobs, and prosperity, and that takes more than just having a democratic system of government. It takes sustained and sound economic and social policies. And it takes time. It takes years to develop institutions. So we're going through that. As many of you know, Guatemala is a country where about 60% of the population live in rural areas. And this, what this means is that the greatest concentration of extreme poverty is in those areas. So it's almost 60% of the population of Guatemala lives in conditions that are considered to be of extreme poverty. And poverty has historic, has cultural, has structural causes that unfortunately have become a vicious cycle where the lack of access to resources, to education, to technology, to health services mean that people who are born in poverty generally stay there. How to break that cycle of poverty is, of course, one of the biggest challenges that a country like Guatemala faces. Not just Guatemala, but certainly it is our biggest challenge. How to develop a country is a challenge. Many of you have worked in development and know this very well. It takes just not government action. It takes the involvement of the private sector. It takes social inclusion. It takes a lot of imagination. And it takes effective, sound, and working institutions. I can tell you that in order to develop our country, we realize, we understand that we need to do more in the areas of health and education. And we realize that access to health has to be expanded. And that health is a critical factor in our development. We know that health contributes to the development by giving people the opportunity to become active participants in their societies. So we need to do more as a state. We have a lot of support from international institutions like the World Health Organization, and we also have the benefit of receiving a lot of help from organizations, American organizations, one of them, Partner for Surgery, which I'm very proud to be associated with. I became familiar with the work, I would say about 8 years ago, if not more. I was very impressed with their commitment, with their work in Guatemala, and I think that there are some key elements of Partner for Surgery's approach that I'm impressed with and that you should be aware of. One is the commitment to sustainability. Another is the inclusion of local and community leaders. That's very important. Another is its long-term vision. And of course, it's a very clearly defined mission. And the most important is probably the effectiveness in reaching out to people who are most in need of medical attention. So I'm here to tell you that I admire their work. I feel very, very proud to be associated with the work of Partner for Surgery. And we want you to get involved with them. We want you to support their work. We want you to feel that you are welcome to Guatemala just as they are, and just as we are so grateful for what they have been doing. Todd, Frank, Linda, and all the members of Partner for Surgery. I'm always grateful and always happy to be with you. So I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Master Villagran. Now, I just want to take a few minutes to sing a song. No, I'm going to a few minutes to talk about Partner for Surgery, how it got started, how it works, and leading up to what we can do together in the cause campaign. So. I brought a clicker, but it doesn't have any batteries. So, next slide, please. So, as the Ambassador Villagran mentioned, and as many of you know, Guatemala is a land of extremes. And you see here some of the images that he was referring to, the beautiful and just breathtaking natural beauty, lush countryside, volcanoes, Mayan culture, etc., and really an incredible place to spend time as a Peace Corps volunteer and with Partner for Surgery. And within that, there's a lot of need and for support and partners in order to address some of the issues that they're currently working on. And that's what Partner for Surgery is endeavoring to do, and that's of course what Peace Corps does. Next slide, please. So here's actually just to bring you way back. That's our first patient ever, Don Ricardo, and this is Paquit. When I first arrived in, I think it was November of '97, we had our training before that, and it was just, they had turned on the electricity about a month or two earlier. They were using candles, and I mean, it was out in the middle of nowhere. About 2.5 hours from Tecpan, Chimaltenango. And now it's about 35 minutes away because they fixed the roads and everything else. But it was way out there. And I didn't have any, I was the first foreigner that had spent any time in their community. They didn't speak Spanish. And I had no trust with them. It took me months and months to realize that the reason things weren't working is they didn't know why I was there. I hadn't built any trust. And Don Ricardo, who was a health promoter in the area and a good friend of mine, he was getting ready to take a shower, and they fed me in the evenings on occasion, and he took off this handkerchief and out fell this tumor that was about 3.5 inches long. And I didn't even know what it was. What is that? Don Ricardo was like, oh, that's my tumor. How long have you had that? 20, 25 years? And, you know, he tucked it back in and, you know, went on with things. And I said, why haven't you had that operated on or fixed? And he said, you know, where would I do that? So I had time on my hands, and none of my other projects were working, and found out that there are dozens of doctors and surgical teams that come down to Guatemala each year, but they didn't have access to people like Don Ricardo. And so that was the impetus for Partner for Surgery. And in 2001, the organization was formed actually by my dad. It came down at the end of my tour, and there were about 6 or 7 patients in our hospital, and my mom and my dad went to go visit, and he was walking out the door. He said, "I'll be back in 6 months." And he retired and came down and started fixing the place up. Pretty cool. So then he was just trying to figure out what he could do. September 11th hit, so it actually wasn't planned, but September 11th hit, and I couldn't communicate with my family for a couple days. I was off at some place with work, and we finally got in touch with each other. Emotional call. I said, you know, let's do this. So I packed up my stuff and we moved down to Guatemala and started this organization. So next slide. So anyway, it's Peace Corps born and raised. This organization started out, you know, with a Peace Corps volunteer myself. You guys coordinated the first medical missions, triage missions. We've had 8 RPCVs as our staff. Ed Butler on our board of directors is a former director, Guatemala Peace Corps director, and it was a secondary project for PCVs, and you know, a lot of volunteers and fundraisers or Peace Corps volunteers. So really an integral part of this part of the surgery. Next slide, please. And then, so what do? I think most of you know what we do, but in essence, we provide the most remote and underserved communities in Guatemala with access to life-changing surgical and other medical care. And now over the years, we've incorporated a lot of health education and training and with the local people, populations, and government. Next slide. So why do we do it? I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think. You know, this little boy suffered enough, obviously, when he received the burn. We can help it so that he doesn't need to live his life with those kinds of, you know, strictures on his body. This little girl, you know, she's going to have a completely new life. We do it because there was a woman across the street from me in that little town that I didn't know lived there for a year and a half when I was in Guatemala, because she lived inside. For a year and a half, I lived right across the street. She had a severe cleft lip and palate, and now she's married because of Partner surgery. This boy, you know, we can help him, and actually he's scheduled for surgery. But if we don't get it in time, we wouldn't be able to. Next slide, please. So it's not easy. We have to overcome a lot of barriers. Some of them were mentioned already, but they have. In these rural communities, they don't have experience with this major medical care. Trying to explain what a surgery was to even Don Ricardo, or you know, how it was going to, where we were going to do it, and the anesthesia and all those kinds of things, that took a while. The fear of the health centers that they're used to when they go for these extreme issues, like a hernia or a cleft lip. They're not aware of the opportunities because of things like the language barrier. The surgical teams might announce in Spanish that they're coming to Guatemala, but they might not understand that, as they didn't understand me when I was strutting out into the square that first day with my Spanish. That was a tough realization. And then little acts, most of them haven't spent much time outside their community, and even if they knew that the surgical team was going to be there, to just head out to Guatemala City with very little money for transportation and all the medical expenses, and it's very difficult to overcome.